Welcome to the Self Love Podcast. I am so excited. Today we have the phenomenal Noelle Whittington, who just happens to be local, which I'm so excited about. I love making
Yay!
local friends, it's so great. And Noelle has I'm not even gonna like a whole page. I know everyone can see this, but a whole page of things that she has worked on and done, and just an amazing light and inspiration to so many. And I know you will come to love her the way I have in a quick amount of time, just by hearing her interview. So, without further ado, Noelle, tell us all the things. Tell us about you.
Oh my gosh, all the things. Hi,
Okay, not all the things, but
Hi everyone. It's an honor to be with you all, and I love meeting new friends, especially local friends. Wilmington is. I was born here and grew up here, and my family lives here. And I came back to start my yoga business and journey after a stint in Costa Rica, where I got my first training, and have been here ever since. So I am. Let's see. I went to NC State University, which seems to be cooler now since they won things.
yeah.
I have a textile design degree and lived in New York City for a while with that job, and felt like I was called to come back down south, and eventually, like I said, got my yoga certification, the 200-hour training in Nosara, Costa Rica. And my school turned into what's called Bodhi Tree now. If anybody makes it to Nosara, it's one of my favorite places on earth. After that training, I didn't want to come home. I surfed and taught yoga around the country. And then when I came back, I have a classical dance background: jazz, tap, ballet, drill team, all the things. So finding yoga was easy for me, and it was a physical practice at first because I'm used to stretching, and movement felt good. And I was drawn to the physicality of the practice, and it took me a little while to realize the depth of the practice and the toolbox for the mind body spirit connection. Early in my career, I taught pretty much every fitness modality class that you can imagine. When you want to be a full-time yoga teacher, you really got to hustle. So did that for a while, and my practice eventually led me to burnout because I was teaching all of these. I taught Pilates, I taught core power yoga, I taught power yoga for these fitness training facilities. I mean, everything. Like when you first start in Wilmington, you had to teach. I think I taught like 26 or 27 classes a week for like the first 5 years of all these different fitness modalities. And then when you teach at a gym, you have to do it all. You're right there lifting the weights and doing the workout with everybody. So
You must have been in amazing shape.
yes, I was. And I was also very tired. I remember taking a lot of naps in my car, driving around town, teaching these classes, and a lot of blueberry muffins from Port City, Java along the way.
Can't go wrong there.
But I was also 25, I think, when I started. So I think you're pretty
Okay.
much invincible in your 20s.
Absolutely. Yep.
Fast forward 20 years later, somewhere along the way, I linked up with one of my best friends and great inspirations, Kristen Cooper Gulak, and her husband, Lauren Gulak, who owned Wilmington Yoga Center at the time. This was in 2006, and I started working with them. And Kristen had a vision for a social entrepreneurship program that would have yoga teacher trainings, would have group classes and workshops and retreats. And it would all be a platform for fundraising for causes that she felt really near and dear to. And her main inspiration was working with children, especially orphaned children.
Wow, I love
And
that.
we did yoga retreats all over the world, and were doing service projects on these retreats. And then we eventually met Paul Wilkes, who is an author himself. And he and his wife, Tracy, they live locally too, which is a miracle. They found the Homes of Hope orphanage on their honeymoon. They just happened to run into it. And in 2008, they found this orphanage, which is an organization that helps orphan children with basic needs, food, home, shelter, but also now, 20 years later, I think we're building the, um, at least 27th orphanage. There was one in 2008 when we started working. And through,
That's
Kristen
awesome.
and Lauren's efforts, and, I helped out along the way and was lucky enough to start pretty much taking over the school in around 2012. And early last year, I took reins of ownership of the Kunga Yoga School. So that
Congratulations.
Thank you. And Kristen and Lauren's son, Miles, is my godson. So Kristen
Oh,
and Lauren get to focus on being amazing parents. And, I get to continue on with the mission. And so that's why I've been pretty much a full time traveler since 2012, because we had studios that would license our Kunga Yoga programs in South Carolina and North Carolina and Virginia. And that was me. That was me doing all that because I have not had my own children. I have Miles. He calls himself my one child, and that's that's true. So I've just been, constantly pretty much working on that, and it has just been the most incredible thing in my life. And along the way, as you could imagine, I got a little bit burnt out on the physical practice of yoga, the asana practice. I was so bored. I think I taught, Warrior One like 875 million times. And I was like,
oh my God.
if I have to do any more lunges, I think I'm going to barf. So what else is there? And I took myself off of the regular class schedule. This was in about 2015, and I had gone through my own relationship challenges, eventually leading to divorce. And in my seeking and searching and needing to heal, I found the practice of bhakti yoga and mantra and chanting, and specifically the harmonium. And so once I found that, my love of music and yogic history and philosophy, and specifically Sanskrit mantra, merged in this love of music where I also got to revive my I had taken all these different instruments when I was younger, and I played the piano. And the harmonium is, well, my harmonium is about 3.5 octaves, so it's small. Octave is 8 notes for the non-musicians out there. So I pump it with one hand and play with the other and
Amazing.
sing, and that healed my heart. The sound vibrations themselves grounded me in this practice of finding not only who I truly was becoming, but being able to find peace and joy and comfort and gratitude. And that really helped me learn finally how to get enough energy out to meditate. Because I, like every human, have a active mind, and that sound vibration changed everything. And so mantra and sound and yogic philosophy and Vedic wisdom and Hinduism and Buddhism have been just my absolute joy and passion within this practice. So I love bringing that into my workshops and teacher trainings, and being able to merge music with contemplative practice, with movement, or whatever it is. So I'm really grateful to be able to fulfill what I think is my calling, my dharma in the world, is to help people find freedom in their bodies and their voices and their hearts through these practices of music and movement.
Ooh, I love that. I love that. Yeah, wow, what a path and what a
Mhm.
journey you've gone on over the years. It's quite a story. And, just listening to you, I'm like, I'm just I know one of the things I want to go back to is something you said. Um, you talked about a toolbox.
Mm.
And in For the Love of Self, one of the pieces of the program is a toolbox, right? Because we have to learn certain ways of coping and managing all these big emotions we have and all this negative self-talk. And so it's connecting the mind and body and finding a way to really transform a lot of that negative energy into positive energy. And so I loved when you talked about the toolbox and connecting mind, body, soul. Can you tell us a little bit about what your own toolbox looks like and how you've kind of changed and evolved that over the years to help serve you and who you are today?
Mm, that is a great question. And I feel like I could talk for hours about that subject. For me, my toolbox changes depending on uh, what my physical, mental, and emotional needs are at the time. The things that always help me remember what's important and who I am are time and nature. First and foremost, if I can even just look outside and find something natural to look at, like let's say we are writing our book and we can't quite go outside, we got to meet that deadline. I can maybe find a window and look at a tree. If I can go outside and get the sun in my eyes and take some deep breaths and put my feet on the ground, I remember that I'm small and I'm a part of something much greater, and I am an animal and a creature of nature. So that's always the most grounding for me. But really, the practice that's been the most profound tool in my toolbox that has changed everything for me is the practice of gratitude. So it's really simple, and you don't have to have any tools to do it. The first second that you realize that your brain is awake, and you may have to pull it back from thinking about all of the things, or let's say, oops, you pick up your phone right away to look at the time, and then all of a sudden you are who knows where on the internet. Take a second,
Yeah.
put your phone down, realize that you're awake, and just say thank you. Um, and a gratitude practice can be anywhere from just expressing gratitude and simply saying thank you if that's all you've got, to those times where life is really hard and maybe you don't feel grateful. Maybe you don't feel like lucky to be alive or healthy or strong. And it actually is hard to get out of bed. Those times are going to happen. And it helps us to stay the course and to remember all the blessings that we do have, so that then we can really appreciate those times where you actually feel grateful. Because gratitude is a practice, happiness is a practice, and these things are choices. But those moments where it links up and you actually feel grateful to be alive are so much sweeter, because you know that you've been through the challenges. So I would say that morning gratitude practice, whatever it is, just a thank you, or maybe for you it's an offering or a prayer or something. That is something that we can do no matter where we are, no matter what's going on. Because I would love to say that my toolbox includes a morning practice that looks like me doing my Ayurvedic, treatments and drinking lemon water, and doing coconut oil pulling, and then doing my asana practice, and then chanting. And there have been times where I've had the discipline to do all those things. But when you got to work really hard and you have to travel and you're exhausted and you're constantly in a new place, routine can be hard. So for me, who both could really benefit from routine, but also feels somewhat trapped and terrified of having routine, um, the
I
gratitude has been with me every step of the way, and it has changed so much for me, and it's opened up so many doors. And as someone who is a recovering people pleaser, I tend to put, anything and everything and everyone above myself, as if I have something to prove and that love is external when it's not. Um, that has been the thing that I always have. So no matter what pattern I'm in and no matter what I'm doing, gratitude is the thing that is always with me. So, and it's really sweet when you do have those moments of being able to get into a movement practice. Dance and free movement really helps. And even just shaking and breathing and putting on your favorite music and shaking your hands or taking big deep breaths. Breath work is another thing that tends to ground me in the present moment as well. So I would really, really recommend those two practices of gratitude and just taking deep breaths in nature when you can.
I absolutely appreciate that. And I love what you said about, I'd love to say my morning routine is like all of this regimented bliss and beauty and all the things I practice.
Yes.
What I've come to learn in my own practice is most mornings, as much as I would love things to go a certain way, they don't always go that way. And it's finding peace without having to kind of stay in that routine. And to your point, just being able to pull little moments where we can to kind of bring us back to self. So I love that. I want to talk to you about, you talked about your going through the challenges in your relationship and the divorce and how that was a really dark period for you. You know, movement obviously helps and connection and breathing, but there's moments where the pain is just so deep and it just cuts us. You know, what is your advice to women that right now are in that moment? What would you say to them?
Oh, I wish that I could save everybody from heartbreak, you know, because I want to take all of the people in the world, especially the women, and just wrap all of us up in a big
Me
hug and
too.
have them look through a mirror, which is not what we see in the mirror, but what I feel that they look like in the mirror. Because when you look
Yes.
at someone and you can see their truth and their beauty and their humanity and their struggles and their pain, but also the absolute liberation and transformation that's going to happen through that inevitable heartbreak that we're going through. I can tell you, I have total chills on my body
Me
right
too.
now.
Me too.
I come to you from the future, from
Ah,
the other side. It might take months, it might take years, but I can tell you that anything that ends is opening up space for a new beginning that our somewhat limited human mind cannot even fathom yet. I feel like our job when we're in those moments of deep, deep pain where it actually physically feels like you might die, like heartbreak, heartache, it does hurt, you know? Like I was just, oof, gosh, I've been devastated in my life, as I'm sure we've all had. And it's hard to do anything in those moments. It's hard even just to survive. Even breathing hurts. So I would just say to breathe, even
please,
though it hurts,
please,
and
all of you breathe.
try try to find, first of all, have grace with ourselves, because we're going to create all these coping mechanisms around the pain. And we need coping mechanisms when we're going through something and we're in survival mode. Know that that takes an immense amount of energy, and that just even covering our basic needs are the first and foremost. So I like to make myself a little note where I can see it around the house. Have I had enough to drink? Am I thirsty? Am I hungry? Have I um, done my gratitude practice where I identify the things that I maybe know are blessings, but don't feel grateful for right now because life is so hard and it sucks and it's painful. So the basic needs: hunger, thirst, rest, and then something that's fulfilling, like time in nature, or something that makes us laugh, or something that makes us feel a little bit of joy. And to your point before, turning negative energy into positive energy, I feel like sometimes that is unfathomable. So I would say find a practice that helps you bring yourself to neutrality, and use those practices of self regulation and hang on to them for dear life. So, self regulation to just neutrality, the thing that helps me more than anything is a practice called japa, which is repetitive mantra recitation. And the reason that it works for me is because I like to use either a little bracelet or mala bead strings. Can you see the beads on here?
Oh, I love that.
It's it's like the adult fidget spinner. So this helps with anxiety because you're physically touching a bead and running it through each finger one at a time, and you're saying something to yourself over and over and over again when you're touching this. Or guess what? You can just touch your fingers. You can just touch your fingers. And the tactile sensation engages your senses that remind our trauma moment that in this moment we're safe. We're not in the past that hurt us, and we're not yet in the future that we're scared of. We exist in this moment. I am peace. I am love.
Mm.
Peace is within me, or just fuck everything. I can do this. I'm sorry. I had to say it. Like
Yeah,
just
you
it
know,
sometimes it feels like that. Like I spent the first probably 10 to 15 years of my yoga teaching career trying to be somebody that was worthy of teaching yoga. And the more human I get and the more I had myself, beat down by the challenges, the more
oh,
that you have had those
listen,
moments where you have to pull yourself up and get out of bed because you have people depending on you and you can't
yep,
stop. And so I would just say that the present moment, the practice of affirmation or mantra has helped me more than anything. So like just get yourself to neutrality and meet your basic needs and do the best you can and know that whatever is ending is making the way for something that is more aligned with who you are and who you are becoming, which can't be bad.
it's never bad. I've
It's
learned
like when
that.
you're on the bottom of the ocean or on the bottom of the pool, like, yes, you're at the very bottom, but you can look up and you see all of this beautiful space above you, and there's literally nowhere to go but up. So I always
Mhm.
think about that times in the water.
I love that actually. That's beautiful. I'm gonna borrow that. Yeah, I think for a lot of the listeners, they can definitely resonate with a lot of things you just said. I know music therapy is one that's big in our group. Being able to not necessarily, to your point, get to a place of, everything's great, but to a place of it's okay. I'm going to do the best I can today just to get through today and do whatever it is I can just to give myself what I need and to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now, with that being said, one of the other things you brought up was people pleasing, which a lot of listeners on here are people pleasers, including myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a recovering people pleaser. And and it just became accustomed to, putting my own needs aside for the sake of everybody else and the greater good of everybody else. I think there is such a lesson there. And I really try to break the code on self care and putting yourself first and your own needs first is selfish because it just drives me crazy. So, one of the things I'd love to hear from you is your thoughts on that, and what you believe is a way to break free from that people pleasing syndrome and getting out of the mindset that self-care is selfish and being able to love yourself and give yourself the things you need. Because by doing that, we have a lot more to give, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing I'll say about people pleasing is it is an ancestral lineage thing. I mean, think about, the people that have come before us, and for the women listening, the women that have come before us, and, our mother figures and our grandmothers and our great grandmothers who were taking care of people. And that was their job. And there was not as many opportunities for them. So, caring for the family was the first and foremost and most important
Mhm.
job, in my opinion. So we carry these patterns in all sorts of different things in our lives, and people pleasing is one of them. uh, I have my own family. The women in my family are so incredibly caring and considerate, and they dote on their family. And you watch that growing up and you think, okay, well, being able to, as a sensitive empathetic person, which a lot of listeners that are listening to this I'm sure are, can relate to being able to feel someone's energy and to intuit and anticipate their needs before they can really express them.
Mhm.
So we're not only dealing with our ancestral patterns that we've picked up through our own families, but also being sensitive and empathetic, and being able to experience people's need. And then for the folks out there with families and partners and children, you love people. We love people. We want to take care of them. So we have all of that stacked up against us. The thing that it has taken me, I'll be 45 in December. And just this year, 44 has been so revelatory because I've allowed myself to understand that my people pleasing pattern was a coping mechanism. If I could be a safe house for people that needed love, or even seek people out, or even work with them, then I don't have to worry about my stuff.
Mm.
And I don't have to be courageous and vulnerable and do the scary thing of looking at my own self. And I have just realized 20 years into being a yoga instructor and meditation teacher that it it's safer to be on the side, the facilitator. I'm behind this wall. Literally, there are walls inside of me that I'm just now starting to look at and understanding that knowing myself, and when I say self, I mean capital S. And in the yogic theory model of the koshas, kosha means sheath or layers of being. We're not only our physical being, which is our body, our energy, and our thinking mind, but we're also the wisdom of intuition and the way that we receive it in our physical self, and we're spirit too. So being selfish is tuning into all of those aspects of ourself. And when we call ourselves selfish and we don't take care of ourselves in a means of pleasing others or taking care of other people, we are discounting ourselves and we're discounting the other people that we're caring for. Because if we honored our own needs and were as healthy and fulfilled as possible, that would give them permission to do the same. All of our interactions would be better. And by the way, if we're thinking from a yogic model, everyone, we're all one, all is one, according to Hinduism. So we're all in this together. And yoga has taught me, and yogic philosophy has taught me that any idea of lack or being separate from the love that we're seeking is delusional. There's an aspect of us that is just pure love and bliss and wisdom all of the time. So when we can lean into that and recognize that we have this great ability to be so sensitive and empathetic and caring and giving, if we turned a fraction of that in on ourselves, we would be absolute superheroes. So I ask you with love, because I've been doing this, I'm asking you and all of the listeners, did this person that you're doing this for specifically ask you for this? Half the time I create what I think other people need and they haven't asked for it. So is this really necessary? Do I absolutely have to do this today? Have I met my own basic needs first? And it's also hard to think that, what if we disappoint someone? That to me is so devastating. And it goes back to self-worth, because when really we're abandoning ourselves if we're going against ourselves and we're disappointing ourselves and we're being dishonest with ourselves and all of these things. So I think it just takes a long time and a great support system and therapy. By the way, therapy has helped me to understand my people pleasing and how to really understand that thinking that being selfish is a bad thing is identifying with lack mentality.
Oh, I love that. Yeah,
So
absolutely. And in
yeah.
coaching, we work on, setting some clear boundaries, more so for our own self-protection, and protecting our own energy and needs. Because by, putting those parameters in place, it allows us to recognize what is it that I need that I'm not giving myself,
Mm,
because then we become less reliant on other people to fulfill that for us and start becoming self-reliant and being the one that can do that for ourselves,
mm,
which, believe it or not, is something that people do lack, um, because we, again, are taught to be caretakers and nurturers and in recipient, not to ask for what we need, because then we're being selfish. And
right.
so, again, it's just kind of all of these modalities kind of coming together and
Mm,
being able to create that oneness with ourself by putting these practices in place. So I love all of that you said, and agree. A lot of it is coming from a place of lack, right? And when we come from a place of love and abundance, then we're able to serve our needs and others in a much better way.
Mm,
And one of the things you said that I was reading, and I absolutely love this, is rejection is redirection. And
okay.
I'd love you to talk more about that.
All right. So that comes from one of my inspirations. Her name is Sahara Rose, and she started out her career writing books on Ayurveda. Her first book was The Idiot's Guide to Ayurveda, and she has a podcast. Maybe some of you have heard of it. It's called the Highest Self podcast. And what I love about Sahara Rose is that she's young and super cool and beautiful, in my opinion, but she somehow has this ancient wisdom that she can translate into relatable ways for us to understand. So she said that, Sahara Rose said, rejection is redirection. And I was thinking about that, and I think it's so true because would we ever want to be denied something that we thought we wanted? How many times have you just absolutely like wished and prayed and hoped something would happen, and then like later on when something does happen that we couldn't even fathom, we're like, thank God that didn't happen. Wow. And we have no idea. So when we get rejected, Sahara would say that it's the universe kind of redirecting us to something that is more aligned with our path and our dharma and our purpose. And to that point, one of the things that I've learned through Kristen and Lauren in the Kunga Yoga School, one of the tenets of Kunga Yoga is nonviolent communication and compassionate communication. And so learning the practice of being courageous enough to feel our feelings is helpful, because when we notice that we have unfulfilled feelings, it's unmet needs that we have. And I would say that it's really hard for us to feel our feelings. Women and especially men, we're not taught that our feelings are important, and a lot of them can be scary. And especially if we have been through heavy trauma, which who hasn't been through trauma, it can be overwhelming to even take time to feel what our feelings are so that we can understand how to ask for what we need. So I would really highly recommend learning about the practice of nonviolent communication. It was developed by Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, and it was for compassionate conflict resolution. But then there's also ways that you can find specific gratitudes, and it's all based on getting clear on what our top needs and values are in the world. And I have a little book here that I'll recommend to you.
Yes, please.
Non
I'll put it in the notes as well, guys, so you can see it. It's a nonviolent communication. And
Mhm.
who is the doctor that wrote it?
Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. He's
Marshall Rosenberg.
Marshall
Okay.
Rosenberg, and he's no longer alive, unfortunately, but his legacy will live on. And
Oh,
so I think that the heartbreak that comes from rejection is allowing us to get a little bit more clear on what is for us and what is aligned with what's best for us. And sometimes we don't even know that yet, because we're constantly changing and shifting, and we're constantly becoming more like ourselves. And so I really have loved getting older, because it's not as if life gets easier, but we just understand that rejections and disappointments and heartbreaks and challenges happen. And even if it feels like we might die at the time, we're not going to. So then we can get through it. Some of my friends that are going through devastating times, we'll talk to each other, and we like to joke like, well, last time I didn't die, so I probably won't die this time. So if we choose to stick around in our bodies on this planet, then there's more to be explored. And so self-regulation is a huge piece in it, and working with a therapist to deal with the trauma that we experience through all of these different scenarios and challenges in our lives are helpful, so that then we can be redirected and move forward. But sometimes it's really challenging to give ourselves permission to get up and start again, because who am I to do that thing? you know.
That's right.
Imposter syndrome is huge as well.
Oh, geez. Yeah, that could be a whole nother podcast, Noel.
Yeah, we could talk for years
I
about all
mean,
these
I,
subjects
I feel like we could just talk all day about
all
all these
day.
different topics. There's so much there, like layers and
Yeah.
layers. And
Mhm.
certainly to your point, all of this I've learned on my own journey. It wasn't something that I just pulled out of a book one day and was like, oh, it's been a process myself. And I know through my own work, I learn as much as I teach, right? I consider
Right.
myself a student and a teacher because I'm constantly learning and evolving and growing myself. I think one of the things too is we tend to think, I'm not where I'm supposed to be. This isn't what I planned. This isn't what it was supposed to look like. This isn't what I envisioned. What would you say to the person that's stuck in that place? How do they get past it? How do they create something different for themselves?
Well, first of all, I would invite that person to acknowledge that what they're feeling is valid. Yes, you're not at the place that you thought that you would be, and that that's exactly how the mind works. Our mind is a beautiful, strong, powerful tool that wants to compartmentalize information and understand what's going to happen because our mind wants to keep us safe. And so the mind often operates from this lens of previous experiences and limited knowledge of what can happen in the future. So when we have expectations and they're not met, it can be sad, it can be a little embarrassing, and it can be very confusing. And really, who is wherever they thought that they would be exactly?
Not
You know,
me.
and I like to equate it. Remember when you were a little kid and you had this great imagination, hopefully you did, or even, as an adult when you read a book and you have this vision and experience in your mind,
Yes.
does reality ever line up with the magic of our imagination? For me, not much, really. So there's so much more that if we can imagine it, we can create it. And it's, for me, it's been having faith in that which we have not yet experienced, and just following the things that bring us joy and light us up are the ways that we can move toward what we would want to do, and who we want to be. So just acknowledging the grief and our experience in, because it is a grief, it is a loss when we finally notice that we're not where we thought we wanted to be. Knowledge the self-judgment, knowledge the lack of self-worth there, acknowledge that we we tried really hard and we didn't get what we thought that we wanted. So that is, think of yourself as a little child version of yourself. I like to do that when I'm feeling really sad or really challenged or vulnerable in some way. I'll, warm my hands up and put them on my heart or put them on my face. Or even there's this energy medicine thing that I learned from my friend Nicole LaFawn, where you take your hands and you cross them and then you pull them in like this. And it's a nervous system regulator hug. So you're holding yourself as the child that you are, because when you're little, hopefully you have somebody there to help you through the big feelings of experiencing the world not being what you wanted it to be at the time. And we're still those little kids, but we expect that somehow along the way we've lost that ability and gained the ability to handle anything, and we're all working it out. So there's so much more than we can even realize. There's magic in the world, and you can see it if you go out in nature. You can hear it if you listen to music. You can feel it when you think about someone that you really love and interactions with somebody that you really love. And so, I mean, surround yourself with people that can listen to you, but not enable you and keep you in that place of stuckness. Because if we do surround ourselves with other people that are just attached to shifting that big, immense, challenging energy to blame, or to wasting time on feeling like, oh, well, I didn't get what I thought I wanted, and it's this fault, or it's politics, or it's this, or it's that, then we're wasting time and energy to do the hard work of looking at ourselves. And sometimes you just need somebody to be next to you and say, well, what do you have to be grateful for right now? Like, what is, good or pleasurable about the experience that you're in? And to just allow yourself to kind of rest in that moment, then thinking about how would you like to feel?
Mm, I
You
love
know,
that.
how do I want to feel in my life? And what's really important to me at this time in my life, because we all change and grow. So maybe our values and needs have shifted because we're in a different season of our lives, and maybe we haven't yet realized that because life moves so quickly,
Mm.
and often we have changed and grown before we even recognize it, and we need to give ourselves grace and time to catch up with our own personal evolution.
Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that. And I love when you said, be careful of people that are enabling us and keeping us stuck, right? Because I think it's a dance. You like
Mm,
it's a dance, right? Because we are on our own journey and growing and evolving, but so is other people in our life. And so how it's that dance between where we're at and where everyone else is and finding a way to meet each other in the middle, right? And to lift each other up, inspire each other, keep each other on our own growth path. How do you see that being possible, growing and evolving with another human?
mm. In relationship with another human.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, Growing and evolving in relationship is very challenging because we,
I appreciate your transparency there.
we yeah, I'm trying to figure out a way not to use profanities again because there's all sorts of them happening in my head.
You
Um,
can.
so
You
I feel that
can.
relationships, especially romantic relationships, are the most challenging and yet the highest spiritual practice because these people that we encounter, every person is a mirror to our own consciousness at the time, and some people are messengers of lessons that we could choose to learn if we could look at that moment, or they are blessings of just bestowing love and gratitude and pleasure. So any interaction that we have is valid and important, but in growing in relationship with someone, here's the self judgment coming in because I am a person who got divorced because I wasn't yet clear on who I truly was and what my values were. And I actually didn't know how to describe what I was feeling and make my needs heard and make requests because not only did I not truly know who I was yet and how to describe who I was becoming, but I also didn't have the courage and the emotional intelligence framework yet to be vulnerable and to tell someone what my feelings and needs were. So until we can get clear on what our feelings are and what our needs are, and then do the huge courageous leap of faith to ask for what we need and to talk to one another and to have those really challenging, hard personal conversations, growing in relationship is challenging and it can seem really impossible because there's this phenomenon of however you meet a person, sometimes people get stuck in that. So, like work wise, for example, when people first met me, I was the Pilates instructor and the core power yoga girl and the one who was going to give you a good workout. And then when I was transitioning in, you know, growing up and being tired physically and also being more interested in becoming a teacher of yogic philosophy and meditation, people didn't want to come to my classes then because they wanted who they thought I was before, but I don't yet have the strength to say, you know what, that's okay. I know that you need that. Go get that. I took it personally. And so it's just this whole cascade of emotions and feelings that are really challenging. And for me personally, it has been choosing choosing people who had so much emotional need that I could focus on their needs before mine and continue my people pleasing patterns, to eventually wanting to choose peace for myself, and then going through therapy to understand that it's okay for me to have feelings and needs in the first place, and then to have the courage to articulate them to others. And that, again, that nonviolent communication practice has been so helpful for me. um, so yeah, I think growing in relationships is, like you said, a dance. And in bhakti yoga, we call it the lila, or the divine play, because we are looking for love from external sources. And we're looking for this one magical person who is going to complete us and to meet all of our needs and to be this, honestly, like non-human creature that doesn't exist. What we're really looking at when we're in relationship is we're looking at the parts of ourselves that we don't yet know how to speak to. And so it can be very hard to kind of dig up that courage to say, you know what? Sometimes love is higher than the truth of the moment and the truth of my experience at this time. How can I
Can you
be
quote
brave?
that? Quote, quote, tweet, tweet, as Oprah says, tweet, tweet moment.
Mic drop. Where's the mic?
That needs to be
um,
written down,
yeah.
posted somewhere. That's awesome.
I mean, let's be honest. It's hard. It's
Mhm.
hard. You know, the divorce rate's really high. It's a heck of a lot easier to leave relationships than it is to stick around with somebody and to do the hard work. And we don't ever really know if it's truly right or not. The only thing that we can know for sure is that change is inevitable.
Mhm.
Things end because we're all going to die one day. And we deserve to work these practices that will help us to find happiness and joy while we're in these bodies and these lives together,
Mhm.
and to listen to not only someone else's experience, but also to give ourselves grace and to find the love that is within ourselves and get to know and like and love who we are, so that we can feel that we have everything that we need within, so we're not looking for someone external to connect the dots or to complete us or to be this magic potion where we can take all this absolutely human and normal craving that we have for love or for pleasure or for attention or for stimulation,
Mhm.
and look at it as we have the power to meet our own needs. And in doing so, then, like, how can we be in relationship with other people who recognize that they too have the power to meet their own needs, so that we're not, dancing together in this codependent
Oh,
little
there's
spiral with each
there's
other.
another buzzword. Now you're bringing up another topic.
I am a recovering codependent person. I need constant reassurance in a relationship. And how many times have I heard, "Oh, you're too sensitive." And then
Yeah.
I internalize that and use that as information to further my journey of not telling people what I need, so they have no idea how to love me. And then I'm like, "Why can't you love me?"
Mhm. Become
Yeah.
friends with Melody Beattie. She's the guru in codependency. She's
Oh,
wonderful.
yes. Hmm.
Yeah, I call it the Jerry Maguire syndrome.
Mm.
The peripheral "you complete me" that gets everybody caught up and stuck. I try to reverse engineer that with, you have to be a whole person. You have to have two whole people come together and kind of add to each other's lives and help each other on their own evolution and growth journey.
Mm.
Without that, there's going to always be two people bringing their own lack into the relationship, which doesn't allow for that growth and evolution that you're meant, your true purpose, right?
Mm.
So, Noelle, who are you dancing with today? Do you have a dance partner?
Well, actually, it's funny that you say that, because I'm taking the first dance class that I've taken in years and years and years and years and years, at this place in Wilmington that I just discovered. It's all about female empowerment. And
Ooh.
so I'm going to have some new dance partners that I have not met yet. But I do have somebody that's dancing with me, and
Aw.
this relationship is different because I have come finally through beating my head against the wall of my own accord, to the place where through therapy I can be honest about my sensitivity and my needs and really let someone in on my experience and tell someone how I'm really feeling and stand up for myself. So I think that I want to say I'm finally dancing with myself, honestly and completely.
Oh,
And that's
I
going to make me
got
tear
goosebumps.
up. Oh
I
my
got
gosh.
goosebumps. Oh.
As my friend Gina would say, feelings gross.
My daughter would say that too, actually.
Ew. Because you have to make yourself laugh and all of this, you know?
You
It's
do.
it's
You do.
it's tough out there.
It is. Well, I'm glad you have a dance partner and I'm glad that's going well. I wish you the best with that. And I think, there's been a lot of great things that have been mentioned and talked about and so much more I'd love to dive into. We'll have to have you back on the show and talk more.
Oh yeah.
But for today, I want to make sure everybody has a chance to know what you're working on, how they could work with you if they want to, where to find you. Um, so where do people go to find more on Noelle?
Well, I'm a one woman band and one woman show, so I have some technology that is not always beautiful or updated completely, but I do have the honor of having had a website made by a local film company called Honeyhead Films. If you all don't know Honeyhead Films, all of my marketing comes from there, the photos and my website of soulalchemycourse.com. They did that website and it's beautiful. So soulalchemycourse.com has information and a form that you can fill out and a video you can watch if you're interested in diving more deeply into your own personal journey of what lights me up and what fulfills me and how can I follow that to find what I believe is my calling in the world and how can I align that with my work and my life and just to live the most fulfilled, authentic life that I can. And I use a lot of Vedic wisdom and Sanskrit mantra and yogic philosophy in that course. And it's a great supplement to any other self development courses that you're doing because we do incorporate yoga and dance and movement and a little bit of information on some lifestyle practices that can help.
Great.
So I have been lately doing that course a couple of times a year. So there's probably going to be another one coming up in the fall.
Great.
But then if you
So
follow,
I wanted to ask you, so to participate in those courses, how much of a yogi do you have to be? Can you be a beginner or do you have to be like know all of the different yoga moves in order to participate in these?
so the definition of yoga in my world is to yoke or to unite the body, the mind, and the spirit. And that comes from the Sanskrit root yuj. So to me, in my lineage of the classical yoga or Raja yoga, it's the eight limbed path and the physical actual yoga moves are only one piece of those eight limbs. So the yoga that we use in this course is more learning about history and some of the sacred texts and the philosophy and the physical practices that we do are a combination of all levels, no experience needed, flow and postures and a little bit of dance and a lot of breath work and some chanting as well. So people don't need to have any physical experience with yoga, and we can work around any needs or injuries that you might have at the time. The yoga is a means to an end. It's not a yoga training in terms of the physical practices, if that helps.
That is wonderful. And I'm asking because I know, a lot of my listeners are not yogis. They don't know a lot about yoga. They've heard of it, but they don't practice it. So for anyone that might be interested, I didn't want to detract them feeling like they had to know more about yoga in order to participate. So
Right.
thanks
Yes.
for
Good
it.
point. Yeah. Yeah. I after, I talked about teaching 25 classes a week early on in my career. I am no longer a fitness instructor. I'm tired. So We're not doing that.
Oh,
Um,
good.
but also, if for those that don't do social media, I have a website that I created that's not the best, but it works. It's narayanishakti.com. And if that's hard to spell, I'm sure you can put that in
I
the show
will.
notes.
Yep.
Um, but the quickest and easiest way to find out what I'm doing if you are on social media is to go over to my Instagram and to click on the link that's in the bio, because that leads us to my link tree, and I update that really regularly because it's so easy and quick. So my upcoming events will be on there. And I'm in the process of taking over and updating the Kunga Yoga teacher training program. So that website is outdated, but it's still beautiful. And that is kungayogaschool.com. And you can find out more about my yoga teacher trainings and Kunga yoga programs on my website or Linktree. I have a couple of opportunities for 200-hour yoga teacher trainings coming up in both Greenville, North Carolina, and in Blacksburg, Virginia. And those will be ongoing. And I do have something else. Oh, I have two amazing international yoga retreats coming up, and Greece
Oh,
is full, but Panama is May 26th through June 4th, and we still have some space. So if anybody wants to come on an all levels yoga retreat and hang out with me in Bocas del Toro, Panama, I would love for them to join. Anybody want to travel and get away? Retreats are my favorite offering because you can really step back and remember what's important and get some time to be a creature of nature, which I think is helpful to everyone. I think we're so caught up in the hustle and bustle of our lives and society that it sometimes is hard to get out of that. So yeah, check me out on social media, and I'd love to meet some of you along the way and practice with you. And if you're in Wilmington, North Carolina, through the end of April, I'm teaching a Thursday morning hot slow flow practice at Wilmington Yoga Center.
okay. And I'll make sure to put all of this in the show notes so everybody can access the information and know where to find you, because I know that was a lot, and I know people are going to want to look for you so that way
Oh
they can
yeah.
just look at the notes and tap and figure out where to go. Um, I know I did want to at least bring up, I know that you do a lot with different charities, and I wanted to make sure we mentioned that in this space. Can you tell us a little bit more about those charities and how you are involved in that, and how people that are listening can also partake in those?
Yes. So thank you for mentioning that. I love the practice of karma yoga, which is the yoga of action. It's our opportunity to take care of ourselves and to learn who we are and who we want to be in the world, but also then to take some of that fulfillment and give back. So that's a huge part of my life. And if people would like to donate, they can go directly to homesofhopeindia.org. So the Homes of Hope orphanages in India is an organization that I spoke to a little bit before at the beginning. It provides a home and basic needs for children in India, but now we're getting into education and arts programs and certain types of therapies, because these kids come in. 80% of the kids either come from either the beggar mafia or from the sex trade industry. Uh, and these kids are some of the most loving and resilient beings that I've ever met. Every time I go and work at one of the orphanages um, in India, it's unfathomable to me that these children that have been so mistreated can still want to touch and be touched and look you in the eyes and tell you that they love you. And that to me teaches me what love is, because love is not this thing that can be given to us, because if that were the case, they would be terrified of love. They just are love, and they're just grateful to be alive, and it's so incredible and so humbling. So homesofhopeindia.org, I believe, is the website for that organization. Locally in Wilmington, North Carolina, there's a nonprofit called the Yoga Village. And they create programs for underserved populations, and they get a lot of yoga programs in schools and in prisons, and for those with disabilities or individuals that have experienced trauma. So yogavillagers.org is the website for that. And that was started by a group of yoga friends right in the back office of the Wilmington Yoga Center back in the day. So, yeah, big thanks to my friends Meg Henson and Heather Lilly and Sylvia Javeli and the whole crew over there. And the third nonprofit that Kunga raises money for is called the Farm Sanctuary, which is an education, advocacy, and rescue center that teaches about the dangers of factory farming, not only from the mistreatment of the animals, but also the detriment that it can be to our own personal health and the huge impact that it has on the planet. So Kunga Yoga is really about not necessarily putting a label on ourselves, but learning about how our choices and our actions affect not only ourselves, but the planet and all of its beings. And we really embrace the concept of ahimsa, which is non-harming and non-judgment, both that and the wish to not harm. So are we really doing the best that we can in taking care of others, but also ourselves too? So that's a huge piece. So if someone wants to learn more about these charities and how to donate directly, they can go to kungayogaschool.com, and they can contact me directly. And I'd love to help direct them to any of those organizations.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, I think it's beautiful work you're doing, and thank you for all you do. It's very
Thank
needed. Um, so tell us before we wrap up today, I'd love to hear from you a couple of your favorite things.
you.
I love, as most of my listeners know, I love books and podcasts and quotes and anything that helps me learn, grow, and inspire and be better. So tell us some of your favorite things.
My goodness. So I really, personally, I love learning about Eastern philosophy and Vedic wisdom and Hinduism. And one of the sacred texts within the context of yoga's evolution is called the Upanishads. And that's a word that means to sit down near, and it references the teacher teaching the student all of the wisdom of life and the universe. And it was written basically as ecstatic poetry, and it marked the movement from yoga as nature rituals in the forest to these scholarly discussion in the palaces and castles. So one of my favorite mantras, and mantra is a word that means mind tool or mind protector. It comes from manas, meaning mind, and tra, to bridge or to protect. One of the chapters in the Upanishads is a mantra, and in English it roughly translates to all this is full, all that is full, fullness is and fullness does, taken from fullness, fullness still remains. And in Sanskrit, that is, where is that? I'm blanking. Oh yeah, Purnamadam, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnam Udachyate, Purnasya Purnamadaya, Purnam Eva Vashishyate. So that speaks to me. Nothing that can ever happen to us, whether it happens to us or whether we inflict it upon ourselves, we can never, as a spirit, be diminished. Nothing can ever take away from the love that we are, no matter what. And in my world, there's nothing to fear. And fear can be this gateway to something that is really important to you because it's protected and locked away in this castle. So I'd love to help listeners find how beautiful these Eastern philosophy practices and wisdom are and how much it has enriched my life. So love, love, love the Upanishads. And I'll send you that information. This is a translation by Ignat Iswaran. And we mentioned before When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron, a Buddhist teacher. When Things Fall Apart is just such I love Buddhism because it's just, there's no flowery languaging. It's just, let's acknowledge that suffering exists, that pain is inevitable, and let's work to acknowledge our situation as it is and work to eradicate not only suffering, but the roots of all suffering. So things are gonna fall apart. And how do we keep going when things do fall apart? And thank goodness that things fall apart, because then something else can come from it. And she speaks a lot in this book about when we want something to be other than it is, we're identifying with what we'd call delusion, or the lack mentality. And on a certain level, if we are always full and we are love itself, then we have nothing to fear. And yet, as humans, we will identify with being separate from that so that we can find our way back to that through all of these beautiful moments in life. So I love Eastern philosophy and Eastern wisdom, and the practice of mantra, specifically Sanskrit mantra, is one of my most favorite things in the world. So I could talk about sound medicine and mantra on a whole nother podcast, but yeah.
Yeah, and we shall.
Yeah.
We shall.
I have
Well,
two
that
new
is
favorite
beautiful.
things.
Oh, so beautiful, and definitely love that. I'd love to share that as well in the show notes with anybody that wants to just sit in that prayer or in that space for a few minutes. I think it was really beautiful. Of course, we'd love a recording of your voice saying it, because I mean, I think that really was beautiful how you said it too. Very
Oh, yes.
soothing.
I got some recordings online if someone wants to pop over to my
Oh,
website.
good.
I have a SoundCloud account, and there are some mantras and kirtan practices recorded if they are interested.
Perfect. See, ask and you shall receive.
Yes.
I love that. Well, this was wonderful. Thank you so, so much for being on today
Thank
and sharing
you.
all of your wisdom and your heart with our listeners. I know that this has just been such a beautiful experience for them as well. So thank you again.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone. It was an honor to be with you all today. And thank you, Elizabeth. I'm glad we met.
Me too. Thanks, Noelle.
Thank you.
And for the rest of you, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen to the Self Love Lounge. It's always wonderful spending this time with you and having this space to share with you. So thank you for partaking and being the best part of the Self Love Lounge. I can't wait to see you all again next week. I love you all to the moon and back.
Aw.